Noisy, isn't it? Well, there was a clip taken from a school playground during break time, so of course it was noisy, but schools can be pretty noisy environments at the best of times, even outside of break time. My name is Ludovica Serratrice, and I'm a language researcher at the University of Manchester. And I recently spent 12 weeks doing some fieldwork into local primary schools, and I was amazed at the level of noise in those schools. There was hardly any time during the day where music wasn't being played or children who were working weren't surrounded by other children who were playing or talking loudly. And it was difficult for me as an adult to concentrate, and there was really nowhere to escape because of the open plan layout of the schools. And so I started to wonder what it must be like for a child spending 6.5 hours a day working in such a noisy environment. How do children sort of hear what is being said to them by their friends, by their teachers, let alone learn anything in an environment that is so noisy? So one day I was in the staff room and I asked these questions to my friend Wendy McCraken, who is a professor of deaf education at the University of Manchester. So Wendy, how do children cope?
Well, it's a really interesting question. If we're finding it difficult to cope as an adult, a child will find it much more difficult because they've got immature listening skills. If they have to concentrate really hard because there's lots of noise going on, they've got less energy to focus on other tasks. So they may be trying to listen, but in listening, they then can't do the task they've actually got to do when they finish listening. So it is really difficult. And it's complicated by the fact that many schools are, as you said, open plan, that the style of teaching is to encourage debate and discussion, but that has to be in a controlled way. Interestingly, in this country, if it's very cold and the heating goes off, you'd go home, and so would I. If the lighting went off, we'd go home. But if it's very noisy, even if the noise is really quite overpowering, we carry on. We can't expect children to work at their optimum if it's a poor listening environment. And similarly, for teachers, if it's noisy and they're trying to talk over the top of children, they're going to get voice strain. So it's no good for anybody. But it's particularly difficult for some children. So if you've got English as a second language, if you've got any kind of other learning need, or if you've got any degree of hearing loss, permanent or temporary, then adverse acoustics is going to significantly affect what you can do and what, the standard of your work, where you're going to be able to get to. It's going to limit you. One of the really concerning things is that although there is some development in terms of building new schools to open learning environments, whilst visually great, they're acoustically disastrous. No one has thought about the actual experience of the child and the fact that they are not adult listeners. It is much, much harder for them. So if we want to improve things for all children, we want to get better outputs, better results for all children, improve the listening environment, make sure they can actually hear what's being said with minimum effort. And that would be the answer.
Thank you, Wendy.